All right, friends, let us all take a comfortable posture by crossing our hands, fingers into fingers, by crossing our legs, by gently closing our eyes. Meditation is all about emptying the mind. Just relax your body. Calm your mind. Starting from today, we'll be having Navaratris. Let us work on thing which we need to let go in these 9 days, which is not bringing any good to us. So today, let us all let go of the anger. When we relax our body, let there be no tension in any part of your body. See where there is discomfort. There is any kind of discomfort, make peace with it. In the same manner, we will also make peace with the anger that we have been holding from long, long time. There is anyone, or if there is any situation that had created anger in you, in your thoughts, just go to that person or go to that situation. Make peace with it. Understand that the anger is not you. Let us drop this anger, any kind of anger that is blocking us to know who we really are. The more you hold anger, the more you feel burdened. Let us drop these baggages of anger. Let us free ourselves from this emotion. Just take a deep breath. Exhale. Gently observe your breath, a natural breath. It is going in through your nose and that is coming out. If there are any situations that you are seeing now through your mind's eye, don't fight with them. Take your time, go to that situation or go to that person, make peace with it or with that person. Be grateful to that person or to that situation. That this emotion of anger, which is inside you, that you are able to witness. The moment you witness that you are angry, you can easily drop it. But the moment you are fighting with that situation or with that person, you prolong your anger. That person or that situation came in front of you to bring the anger which is inside you to the surface so that you can able to see to it, can able to drop it. Just observe your natural breath, a soft, tender, tranquil breath. There will be music in the background. It will remind you to be with your breath. Take a journey towards yourself. Go to the deepest places of yourself. and realize who you are. It's an everyday process. Just be with your breath. Last 2 minutes, friends. Become aware of your physical body, your surroundings. Last 1 minute. This last 1 minute, hold a lot of gratitude to each and every person, to each and every situation, to each and every living and non living thing. Last 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now slowly place your both hands over your eyes for a few seconds. And whenever you're ready, you may remove your hands and open your eyes. Welcome back, friends. I hope you all had a beautiful session, very short one. If there is anybody who wish to share your experience, you can unmute yourself. You can share your experience. Or if you are still in that mood of meditating, please go ahead. All right. So, friends, today we will be reading two chapters. I want you all to close your eyes once again and let us dive into the times of Mata Sita. Yesterday, Mata had met Mandodari for the first time. So today, Mata has given her teachings. Sita's teachings to Mandodari. Soma had been speaking for a long time. Are you tired, Soma? Asked my mother. My rest will come soon, Soma replied. She took a deep breath and continued her story. A few days after speaking with Sita, Mandodari had a terrible dream. She remembered the time when she was a young woman and her parents had refused Ravana's offer of marriage. His anger disturbed the whole household and she grew fearful. Then in the night he abducted her. Her fear of him gradually led to her surrender, and finally she had no choice but to marry him. Eventually, that fear turned into love and devotion, and he became the center of her life. All of her actions and thoughts were devoted to his well being, and she gave no consideration to her own needs. He had become her God. In the dream, she saw his demonic form, and once again fear came over her. She awoke in a great sweat. Quickly dressing, she hurried to the garden where Mata sat in meditation. Not wanting to disturb her, Mandodari sat down quietly and tried to calm herself. She didn't know why she had sought out Sita, but she had nowhere else to turn. She feared that her dream was a bad omen and that something terrible was about to happen to Ravana, her beloved husband. Gradually, Mata opened her eyes and found Mandodari seated in front of her. Fear was etched across her face, and gazing at her with compassion, Mata took hold of her hand. As soon as she touched her, Mandodari dissolved into tears. Just as he abducted you, Mandodari, how many others had he abducted? You he married, the others he cast aside. He's instilling new norms in the human mind, and this is very dangerous for society. Others will follow his lead. Women will be seen as objects of pleasure and then tossed aside. No, Mandodari, this cannot be. He must be stopped. Mandodari was quiet, wiping her face of all remnants of tears. She then asked Mata, what have I done in the past that I have grown so attached, so devoted to one who is causing such disruption to the world? Why, Mata? Why? What have I done in the past to be in this position? Close your eyes, Mandodari, and see the past. Mata gently tapped her on the forehead, and scenes from a previous birth came before Mandodari's inner eye. She saw that her parents would not agree to any marriage. They could find no one suitable for their beautiful daughter, and so she remained unmarried. Yet her heart longed to find a husband to whom she could devote herself. She vowed again and again that if she could marry, she would be the ideal wife, sacrificing her needs to those of her husband. This longing remained with her throughout her life, and on her deathbed, her last thought was that if she were so fortunate to find herself a husband in her next life, she would sacrifice everything for him. In order to fulfill this past desire, you sacrificed yourself, said Mata gently. Your mistake was in placing this desire of yours over the good of society and what was truly best for you. One's first responsibility is to one's dignity, Mandodari. That comes even before devotion to one's husband. You have succeeded in one area and have been the perfect wife, but you have not succeeded in maintaining your dignity as a woman. But then, Can you be an ideal wife if you have not maintained your dignity as a woman? You have sacrificed dharma for the sake of your husband, and this is a course that leads to pain and suffering. You have known about his treatment of other women and remained silent. You have seen his quest for power, his arrogance and hatred, and did nothing to oppose him. Mata continued. Not only did Ravana capture your body, but he also captured your mind. You must free yourself from that captivity. You must, Mandodari, not just for your own sake, but for the sake of Lanka. You are the real captive here, not I. So do not feel sorry for me. Ravana holds no sway over me. Freedom is in the mind, Mandodari. Free your mind. What could I have done, Sita? Ravana has grown so powerful. What could I, a woman, have done? Mata laughed. Are you not powerful as well, Mandodari? Do you not realize that had you left Ravana, half of his power would have fled as well? Leave him? The thought had never entered Mandodari's mind, and it made her shudder now. Is it really love that keeps you here, or fear, or a vow taken long ago under very different circumstances? Love is not born out of fear or out of selfish desire. Love is born of freedom. Are you free, Mandodari? She didn't answer. Then she said, I see the terrible consequence of his actions. I see it coming, Sita. But will my children also have to pay the price for his misdeeds? Nobody is made to suffer for another's misdeeds. They will only reap the consequence of their own actions. There is still time for them to disavow their father's behavior. But will they do it? I am afraid, Mandodari, that many on both sides will die. That is the real tragedy of the whole affair. It could have been prevented, and perhaps still can be, if we could somehow shatter Ravana's arrogance and pride, free him of his lust and greed. What can I do, Sita? Her tears had ceased, and she looked at Mata with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. You have a choice, Mandodari. You can leave and return to your maternal home, or you can stay. But then you must fortify yourself for what will come. Seek the guidance of Parvati Ma. She will give you the strength you need. Mandodari was quiet for some time, reflecting on Mata's words. Then she said, I must bear responsibility for what will come to pass. I must be the witness of what happens when women's voices are muted. And so I will stay in the hope that I can repair what damage will be done. Suddenly, the image of her sons came before Mandodari, and the tears began to flow again. You're not a mother, Sita. You don't know a mother's sorrow. You're wrong, Mandodari. All that you see, these are my children, and I suffer with them. I am your tears flowing for the death of your sons. They are my sons as well. Mata paused and then began again. You are not of this clan, Mandodari. Their ways are not your ways. Separate yourself in your mind so that your healing power will grow stronger. It will be needed. Sita, I have seen you be firm as a rock and soft as a gently flowing river. How is it possible to be both? If one is soft, one can be crushed. If one is firm, it is difficult for love to flow. Ravana has used all of his illusionary powers to break you, to no avail. He has tormented you, threatened, and imposed the worst of his magical illusions on you. And still, I have seen you speak with compassion, with no anger or hatred toward him. How is this possible? Anger and hatred are for the weak of mind. One must rise above these harmful emotions. If I were to succumb to anger or hatred, that would be Ravana's victory over me. The love that sustains this universe is far greater than any human emotion, and that love is both gentle and firm, personal and impersonal. There is no contradiction here, Mandodari. That is one secret that Ravana has yet to learn. His heart appears to be devoid of love. Mata turned her eyes from Mandodari and gazed off into the distance. But that is not the truth. No one is without love, but it can be deeply hidden. Pain can overshadow it, and one must learn to erase this pain, to rise above it, so that the hidden love can be released. Turning back to Mandodari, she added, all that you have done for him, Mandodari, all that you have sacrificed, has not served to awaken the love that is buried deep in his heart. Something else is needed. Mata was quiet for a few minutes and then said, it is most important, Mandodari, that you make peace with yourself and free your mind from Ravana's clutches. You must leave it to others to awaken him to his true nature. Internally, Mata whispered, you must leave that to Ram. That is the reason for my presence here. The sun was just peeking above the horizon, and Mandodari made a motion to rise. As she did, Mata suddenly touched her arm and asked, you have a daughter, don't you? Mandodari nodded in surprise. Nobody in the palace spoke of her daughter, as she had been gone a long time. She is with her husband's family. I have not seen her a number of years. Call her to you. Call my daughter? Mandodari could not conceal her surprise. Again Mata nodded. She is wiser than you know. She will be of assistance to you now. Thanking Mata for her counsel, Mandodari took her leave. It was not long afterwards that Hanuman arrived and found Mata. When he appeared before her, Mata recognized immediately that he was the manifestation of Mahadev, of whom Parvati Ma had spoken, and she rose and sought to touch his feet. Nai, Mata, he said, stopping her. I am your devotee. Mata shook her head. How can that be, Prabhu? I have come to serve Sri Ram and you. I cannot see you as my devotee Hanuman, but I can see you as my son. Hanuman smiled. That suited him just fine. From that moment on, she called him Putra, that means son, Hanuman. But how did you find me? Lanka is such a maze, and Ravana has hidden this garden so that no one can enter without his permission. I heard the sacred name of Ram humming through the ether, and I followed the humming to its source. Every atom in your body, Mata, is reverberating with Ram, Ram, Ram. My body, mind, and spirit also resonate with the name of Ram. Mata smiled. Your appearance here has brought me much joy in this loathsome place. Mata took his hands and held them to her cheek. How happy she how happy she was that he had found her. It made her feel that Sri Ram was not far away. Then Hanuman took out the ring Sri Ram had given him to bring and handed it to her. When she saw Ram's very own ring, a cry of joy escaped her lips. Placing the ring on her finger, her bond, her link with Sri Ram was re-established. After so much time, I can hear his heart beating again, she whispered. My Ram is alive and well. No one knows the agony this separation has caused, not knowing what his condition has been. Mata then took out her hair ornament, the only ornament, aside from her mother's pendant, that she had been wearing on the fateful day she allowed Ravana to capture her, and handed it to Hanuman. Give this to Ram and let him know of my condition. It will help him to feel my proximity. Hanuman nodded. Sensing the austerities she had endured, Hanuman was concerned. Mata, you have not eaten in so long. Let me bring you some mangoes from the garden. She shook her head and told him that she was unable to eat or drink until Sri Ram's arrival. Putra Hanuman, you eat on my behalf. What you eat will nourish me. Mata looked up and saw the small white bird perched on an upper branch. She smiled at it, and the bird hopped about in response. Seeing the interaction between Mata and the bird, Hanuman smiled and replied, I understand. I see the one who has been your companion during this captivity. How much time has passed since that day? Spending most of her time in meditation, Sita had completely lost track of the time. Over 9 months, Mata. Sri Ram has been gathering an army and will be here soon. A war will cause such devastation, Mata said mournfully. Putra Hanuman, your compassion is unrivaled. You are the heart of the world. Please talk to Ravana and seek to awaken him to his true nature. Hanuman said, I will try. If he is unable to refuses to relinquish his arrogance, the destruction of Lanka will begin. I will be the first to light that flame. That will be an act of compassion to all who live captive in this land. Before you leave, let me gaze on you a little longer, Putra. You have so lightened my spirit. Mata took in his radiant form, which emitted a gentle golden hue, his long, flowing, abundant hair, his shining eyes that glowed with such love. Finally, she directed him to the garden, where he could fill himself with fruits. Sure enough, he ate his fill and then allowed himself to be taken captive and brought before Ravana. Despite Hanuman's attempt to penetrate Ravana's locked heart, Ravana's blinding arrogance made him strike out against Hanuman. Hanuman was wearing a simple cloth tied around his waist, falling just below his knees. Ravana instructed the gods to set fire to the cloth he was wearing, but Agni Dev would not appear, and so the fire did not light. In a fit of anger, Ravana's eldest son, Indrajit, grabbed the torch and mocking Hanuman, calling him an animal and a monkey man. He tried to light the cloth and then he tried to lift it. Let's see if this monkey man has a tail, he exclaimed as the gods who were gathered around broke into wild laughter. Still Agnidev would not come until Hanuman beckoned him. Agnidev, he whispered, let the purification of Lanka begin. And so the rear of Hanuman was set on fire. But through his mental powers, he transferred Agnidev to the administrative buildings of Lanka, and they burst into flames as the fire on Hanuman subsided. Everyone scattered to put out the burning buildings, and Hanuman was able to escape. When Sita realized what had happened, she shook her head sadly. Ravana's son did not know what he was dealing with the Lord himself. The fire is a seed of his destruction, and his death is now sealed. The meeting with Hanuman renewed Mata's strength, for she knew that Mahadev's presence was now with Ram, and she began to let down her guard. As she did, Ravana's mental assaults increased. One day, as she was seated in meditation, Mata saw a terrible scene unfold before her, a massacre taking place in Mithila. As her parents lay dying, her father called out her name in an agonized voice. With her emotions in turmoil, Mata's eyes flew open and she jumped up. She had to reach them. Realizing where she was, she sank back into meditation, inwardly calling out to her father to feel his presence. But again, the horrible scene arose before her. Hours passed as she struggled with her emotions. Toward the end of the day, Ravana arrived, and in a sympathetic voice said, Sita, I am so sorry to have to bear this news. There has been an attack on Mithila, and your parents have both been killed. When Mata didn't respond, he repeated the news as if she hadn't heard him. How do you know this to be true? She asked in a cold tone. My spies have just returned and have reported the news to me. Mata didn't respond. She wouldn't let Ravana see the emotions that were smoldering within her. Cold hearted daughter, you don't even respond to the death of your parents? Mata shut her eyes and withdrew into meditation. Now there is only the death of Ram to await, and then you will have no one left but me. You know that after Ram dies, you will never be accepted back to Ayodhya. And now that Mithila is finished, where will you go? Who will rescue you? The thought then entered Mata's mind that he had arranged for her parents to be killed. Mata kept her eyes closed and held her emotions in check until night arrived. When she could not let go the floodgate of tears, her agony released. She called out to her father again and again. In the middle of the night, as she was gaining control of her pain, she saw a ball of light emerge from the sky and approach her. It took the form of Sage Anasuya, who then settled on the ground before her. Sita, Ravana has created the illusion of your parents' death. He has managed to trap you again in his illusionary world. See for yourself. Your parents are alive and well. Mithila is safe. Mata closed her eyes. In a vision, she saw her father deep in meditation at a forest hermitage and her mother safe in the palace. Opening her eyes, Mata touched the feet of Sage Anasuya with her hands and thanked her for revealing the truth. Sage Anasuya saw that Ravana's mental manipulations were wearing Sita down. Taking Mata's hands in her own, she said, "Draw from me whatever strength you need for this battle, Sita. You are entering a new phase in the effort to awaken him, and the mental battle that must now begin in not for your survival but for his release. You have been on the defensive, resisting his mental attacks. Now you must strike out in the same manner. As Ram performs the outer work, so you must do the inner." She told Mata that Ram was approaching and would soon be there, and as he came closer, Ravana would grow more desperate and would stop at nothing to defend himself. "He will not harm you physically," she said. "He is unable to do that, but he will assault you mentally, and so you must now engage with him." Mata looked at her questioningly. "You must bring before his mind all the damage he has done, the suffering he has incurred. Enter his dream world, Sita. That is the only way to reach him now. He has closed off every other access point. Unlike you, he is unable to do without sleep, and so you can reach him when he is asleep and his guard is down. I will show you how to enter his mind in this way." For a long time they sat together in meditation. When Mata opened her eyes again, Sage Anasuya was gone. The first rays of dawn were just beginning to reveal themselves. As soon as the sun mounted its way across the morning sky, Ravana arrived, expecting to find a distraught Sita mourning her parents' death, but instead he found her calm, unmoving. It was a rare occurrence for her to look directly at him. This day her eyes met his, and she said, "You must know, Ravana, that deceit brings its own return. No longer will I be subjected to your illusions." Her words evoked thunderous laughter for him. "Sita, you are trapped in my world, a world from which there is no escape." Fire rose within her spine. "It is not my duty to end your illusions of power. That duty belongs to Ram. I have told you before, and I will tell you again, that no power of yours could keep me here if I did not will it. I am here only to help Ram release you from your illusions." After more laughter and taunts, Ravana left, and she spent the day meditating on Sage Anasuya's words. That night, she did enter Ravana's dreams, not as herself, but as one of the celestial women he has abused. In the dream, the woman berated him and called out for justice. An army of Devis responded and surrounded him. They threw weapons at him from all sides. Ravana did not appear before Mata the next morning, and that night Another of the abused women appeared in his dreams and called out for justice. And so it went night after night as the woman he had violated came to claim justice. One night they all appeared together, and their voices rang out so loud that even the great Ravana shook. And it was not just the woman. All of his atrocities were laid bare before him, with voices echoing from everywhere as they called for justice. Mandodari came before Mata one morning and told her that Ravana was now afraid to sleep. He is haunted by dreams and refuses to even lie down, she said in a worried tone. He keeps himself occupied all through the night so that he won't sleep. But his lack of rest is unnerving him and affecting his mind. She asked Mata what potion could help him, but Mata only replied, let the work be done, Mandodari. Do not stand in the way of justice. 2 weeks passed, and Ravana had not come before Mata. The dreams that tormented him were appearing to him even in daytime. Finally, one morning he appeared before Mata in a livid mood and blamed her for bewitching him. Why blame me? She asked. It is your own deeds you are seeing. But he blamed her presence, her tapasya, and could not accept that anyone could have such power over him. He decided to kill her, thinking that would relieve him of his tormented nights. But Mandodari ran to him before he could raise his sword and stood between the two of them. You will bring your own downfall, she shouted at him. I will not let you destroy yourself. Move away, Mandodari, he cried. This woman has bewitched me, and for that she must die. Mata sat calmly in meditation, with her eyes closed, as if not even hearing the commotion around her. The protective shield created by the women of Ayodhya still hugged her form, and not even Ravana's rage could break through. When Mandodari refused to move and broke down into tears, Mata opened her eyes and said gently, Mandodari, I have told you, his fate lies in his own hands. He cannot bear to see the effects of his past deeds, and thus he hides himself in a shroud of anger. He cannot face himself. Neither you nor I can save him. Only he can do that. Then turning to Ravana, she said, you call yourself the master of the three worlds, do you? But you are not even the master of yourself. The dreams you see are but a reflection of what you have become. It is not too late to change Ravana. There is no deed that is beyond forgiveness. Mata's words infuriated Ravana, and he departed in a fit. That night, despite his best efforts to stay awake, he drifted to sleep. Instead of being haunted by the past, he found himself standing before Narayani, who said, your deeds have taken you very far away from Vaikuntha, so far that it will be difficult for you to find your way back. But it is not beyond your means if you allow the remembrance of who you are and where you came from. Let go of your anger, your lust, your jealousy, your thirst for power and revenge. Uproot those seeds that have dug themselves deep into your being and let love flow again in your heart as it once did. Ravana awoke with a start. It was still night. Disturbed by the dream, he made his way to his mother, the powerful Kaikesi. Sita is no ordinary woman, Ravana. She mused after hearing about his series of dreams. She has managed to enter your mind and is seeking to mold you to her will from within. She is powerful. Stop fighting and marry her. You will gain even more power through her. But how to reach her? I send some protective shield around her. I will find a way to break it. Sit with me, and I will transfer to you some of my power through the sacred mantra I use when nothing else will work. They sat together for some time as Kaikesi repeated the mantra. Ravana's approach to Mata changed after this as he sought to court her. This presented an even greater danger, so Mata had to withdraw deeper into meditation, hardly ever opening her eyes. The more she withdrew, the greater grew Ravana's desire, until one day he lurched at her, seeking to break the protective shield around her with his sword. For the first time, Mata was in physical danger. His power was such that he would have broken through had not another power come to protect Mata. As Mata saw him lurch toward her, before she could even respond, she saw the light form of sage Lopamudra emerge from the ethers. The sage transformed herself into many, and with strokes as quick as streaks of lightning, her many hands encased him and threw him backward. He reeled all the way across the garden and landed on his back, seemingly unconscious. The guards rushed to his aid and carried him off. The many forms of sage Lopamudra merged into one, and she stood before Mata, shining more brilliantly than the light of the day. Mata folded her hands in gratitude, her eyes betraying the deep appreciation for all the women sages who had come to her aid, guarding and protecting her. You have done your part, Sita. The rest belongs to Sri Ram. Do not be deceived by Ravana's outer behavior. You have stirred the seeds of his shame. He is now rattled by discontent, which will not subside, and this will open the way for Sri Ram's victory. Now you must turn your attention to the outer battle that lies ahead. The balance of the world depends on this battle, and it will be fiercely fought. You must nurture the regenerative powers of Sriram's army so they will not suffer defeat. We will all be present to assist. Her light form faded into a faint outline. Through the rays of the sun, Mata could perceive the light forms of the many sages who had visited her since her arrival in Lanka. Parvati Ma sat at the front with lines of women seated beside and behind her in meditation. We are the invisible army, they said. We guarantee Sri Ram's success. And the next chapter, friends, is the inner battle. Soma continued uninterrupted. It was in the first days before the great battle that Ravana approached Mata in a state of fury. When his efforts to woo and charm her failed, he once more resorted to threats, worn down by sleepless nights and burning with anger as a result of what he called her witchcraft. The very thought that a woman could outwit him was beyond what he could bear. All of his efforts to trap and confine her in mental illusions no longer had any effect. Mata was on constant guard, for by now she knew how subtle were his ways. He approached one morning determined to weaken her by creating in her mind the illusion of Sri Ram's death. Laughing and taunting her, he projected an image of Sri Ram lying fatally wounded on the battlefield. This is the future. Your husband is but days away from his death. He laughed in the raucous voice of his. Mata had been seated in meditation. The image of Sri Ram lying lifeless was before her. But this was not the first time Ravana had projected such images into her mind. She showed no outer emotion, but inwardly her heart trembled at the sight of her beloved lying there, even though she knew it to be an illusion. She opened her eyes and, with a steady gaze, slowly rose to her feet, shaking her head slightly, allowing the shadow of a compassionate smile to cross her lips. She spoke to him. Your decades of tapasya, Ravana, have been for naught. Your years of meditation, supplication, and invocation have taught you nothing. You have wasted so many precious years, years that could have steered you toward your goal. This is not the reason for which you were born, to torment people by creating false worlds. worlds without substance and no bearing in reality. Reality? He laughed. I create reality. I can enter any mind and insert any thought, any image. What is reality, Sita? But my own creation. She shook her head. You are mistaken. You have mastered the illusionary arts, but all you have created is falsity, with no semblance to reality. It can all be destroyed in a moment. There is a reality, Ravana, beyond the world of illusions, but this reality is far from your reach. You know nothing of the self. You know nothing of who you truly are. You think you are Ravana, lord of the three worlds, but that is not the truth. That is not who you are. Ravana seemed shocked that she would speak such words. He thundered, have you not seen how I control this world? I create streaks of lightnings to crash down on the earth, unleash the rains, stop the movement of the planets. They are all under my control. Shall I show you? All illusions? She persisted. You have created the illusion that you can do these things, and many believe you. But I have seen through your mask, Ravana, and know that you're locked in a tortuous web of lies, all lies. Sita, he yelled, I can take your life at any time. You cannot take my life, she replied, shaking her head. You may take this body, but this body is not who I am. Have you not realized this yet? Have my words all these months had so little effect? I am not trying to spare your life, but it is too late for that. But I am trying to spare you from what will come after. For millennia of wandering far from the place to which you seek to return, the place that was once your home. That is what I am trying to remind you of. Awaken, Ravana, to who you truly are. Her words rang out from all directions, not from her lips alone. He stood speechless before her. She thought she caught a glimmer of remembrance in his eyes, and so she took advantage of that moment. You were born with great potential and could have achieved much for humanity. That was the purpose of your birth, to use your gifts, your years of tapasya, your scholarship, the boons you received. What were they all for it? For if not to benefit society? Instead, you created a warped world for yourself, which you thought you could control. But the only one truly caught in illusion is you, Ravana, not the many you have destroyed. The glimmer of remembrance faded away, and once more anger shook his being. His face grew red, and his eyes nearly popped out of his head. He sputtered some words and with a threatening glare stalked off. Mata knew that she had created an opening in him, and it was for Sri Ram to do the rest. Mata had become transmitting to Sri Ram whatever knowledge she could uncover about Ravana's military strength and strategy. She also conveyed to him her distress over the death and destruction that a war would incur. And so, when Ram arrived in Lanka, after overcoming the many obstacles Ravana had placed in his way, he sought to prevent the conflict, but it could not be avoided. Ravana defied his efforts, taunting him to try the strength of his army against the army of Lanka. And so Mata braced herself for what was to come. Through her inner eye, she saw Sri Ram standing on Lanka's shore, looking sorrowfully over the kingdom that was soon to be destroyed. Both armies had access to highly advanced weaponry that could cause massive destruction to all living creatures. Innocent plants and animals would suffer. They too would be destroyed. A deep sigh escaped both of their lips as they took in what lay ahead. The pain in his heart was her pain. His was the outer role, hers the inner one. For this battle, they had to work in harmony. She had to be attentive to every detail so that she could assist from her station inside the mental framework of the demon kingdom. The next day, the fighting began. Dark clouds hung like thick, wet tresses, clinging to the land, divided only by the plethora of arrows that shattered the air. For hours it continued, exploding the earth, leaving the stench of death. Day after day, it went on until many of Ravana's top generals were killed, including his son and heir. The pain was unbearable for Mata. She could not distinguish one death from another. It no longer mattered to which army they belonged when she felt bodies being torn to pieces. It was all part of the same life, life that also belonged to the earth, the trees, the land. One day, just as the sun was setting, the demon god Trijita came running to tell her that Lakshman had been killed. Mata shook her head in disbelief and whispered, "It is not possible." Trijita had become a friend and guardian and would not lie. "It is true, Sita. I heard it directly from the battlefield. He has been hit with a poisonous arrow for which there is no antidote, at least not anywhere nearby. I am so sorry. It will be a great loss for your husband to lose his brother." Mata slipped immediately into meditation, and through her spiritual eyes she saw Lakshman writhing in pain. The words of Surpanakha returned to her, condemning her beloved brother-in-law to a painful death. Sri Ram was seated beside him, wiping his twisted face with a wet cloth soaked in medicinal herbs, trying to calm his agony. She saw a physician there instructing Hanuman to go in search of the sacred Sanjeevani plant, the only medicine that could counteract the poison. But he had to return within a few hours, the physician said, or the plant would be of no avail. Time was of the essence, as the poison was entering his bloodstream. Only once before had anger arisen in Mata, when Ravana had grabbed her by the wrist. But now the anger rose again, riding a wave of fire that shot up through her spine. She found herself exiting her body and standing before Lakshman. She wanted to reach out to him, but she was not in a physical form and could not be seen or heard. She could not touch him or do much to assist. As she stood thus, wondering how she could help keep him in his body until Hanuman returned, she saw a shadowy figure approach. She immediately recognized Yamadev, the lord of death, coming to lift Lakshman's spirit from his body. Pushing aside the great winds that flew in the wake of Yama's approach, tossing away the dark clouds that had begun to engulf Lakshman's body, she placed herself between Lakshman and Yamadev, and stretching her arms out wide in a protective stance, she cried out, "You will not touch him." "It is his time, Mata. Please stand aside," replied Yama. When she refused, he pleaded, "I do not want to fight you, Mata. Please let me do my work." This is his karmic return for having disfigured a woman who was no threat to him, and for all the killing of the Asuras. Ram too must make a sacrifice in this great battle. "But what he did was in my defense," she cried. "Every action brings a reaction. That is his due. His allotted time is up, and I must take him. You will have to take me before you take him." And so their battle began. Mata against the Lord of Death. Throughout the night they fought. Yama tried to approach Lakshman from every angle, but Mata was too quick, leaping from one side to another, and managed to keep him at bay. Again and again she cried that he would have to take her first, and again he replied that it was not her time. Finally he said to her, "I will leave him, but you will have to give me something in return." She was by now exhausted from the battle, and so agreed. "I will take some years from your life and extend his," Yama said. She nodded. As soon as she gave her consent, she saw him fade away into the distance, and the dark clouds around him dispersed. Realizing that Hanuman would soon be back with the sacred herbs, Mata also withdrew. She awoke some time later to find herself lying on the grass beneath the Ashoka tree. It was just after dawn, and Trijita was standing beside her, trying to revive her, telling her that Lakshman had survived the wound. Soma said, when Mata told Hanuman that story, she said she did not know whether the battle that she held with Yama was a dream or reality. It didn't matter. Lakshman survived, and that was all she cared about. But Hanuman told me that when he returned with the Sanjeevani plant, and when Lakshman opened his eyes, his first words to Sri Ram were, where is Sita? When Sri Ram told him that she was still captive in Ravana's palace, Lakshman shook his head and said, no, that is not possible. I saw her here. I saw her standing before me. This is how I came to know that Mata's battle with Yamadev really did take place. This was a turning point for Mata. Her energy was depleted, but the battle was almost over. Nobody knew about this incident with Yamadev aside from Hanuman. Mata never spoke of it. It was only in the year before she left this world that Parvati Ma told Sri Ram what had taken place. When I questioned her about the incident, she was hesitant to speak of it and said only that she did what any mother would do for her child. Lakshman was indeed like a son to her. Soma stopped her storytelling as her tears prevented her from speaking. When she could speak again, she said, there is so much about Mata that nobody knows. Her work was unseen, hidden from the world, and she was content to keep in that way. She told me repeatedly that the true work to preserve this world takes place away from the eyes and ears of humankind. The day had slipped into early evening. We had been transported to another time and place, and as I came back to my normal consciousness, I looked around and saw that Soma's small hut was now filled with aesthetics. Some seated, some standing, some leaning in from a small window. They had come for nourishment of their bodies, but instead had received nourishment for the souls. Perhaps we should let you rest now. You have spoken all day, Soma, and we are so very moved by what you have narrated, said my mother. Soma shook her head. We are almost at the end. I will finish this part of the story of Mata's sacrifice. Both armies suffered great losses, and the damage to the wildlife and trees, the ocean life, and all living creatures had been great. It was now time for Sri Ram to face Ravana. Mata had not communicated to Sri Ram what she had seen about the true identity of Ravana for fear it would impede the battle. But Sri Ram intuitively knew. This made his task all the more difficult but also more urgent. He desperately needed to free his devotee from the great delusion that had overtaken him. During her time in Lanka, Mata had done her best to penetrate the recesses of Ravana's mind to try to awaken him. His mental ability, his acuity, and discernment had weakened from many months of lack of sleep. Now it was Sri Ram's role to complete the process. In the end, it was Sri Ram's love that undid Ravana. As they battled through the day and night, Sri Ram saw the work Mata had done to unravel the intricate web of deception he had built. Mata described it like this. She was seated in meditation, and when she felt a tremendous burst of love rush over her in unending streams, like gushing fountains of the most refreshing waters, she sat there in great bliss. Eventually, she opened her eyes and saw waves of love rushing over everything, the trees, the plants, the gods around her. Then she realized it was coming from Sri Ram. Before he shot the final arrow, he stood for a moment, peering into Ravana's spirit and freeing him from his delusions. He sent that flood of love of which he is the source, and then unleashed the final blow, cutting the roots of the 10 deadly traits that had held Ravana captive in illusion. As Ravana lay dying, the two of them spoke. Deeply humbled, Ravana asked Sri Ram if he could now return to his true home. Sri Ram sadly shook his head and said that although he had destroyed much of the karma Ravana had occurred, one more birth was needed for him to free himself fully, to ensure that his lust and pride were completely uprooted, his ego dissolved. That last effort had to be his to make. As Mata had foreseen, he would wander for millennia for the last birth. It would be a long time before he could gain acceptance back into the higher realms. Mata knew the moment the battle was over. At that exact time, the Amrita that had sustained her stopped flowing. As she began to emerge from meditation, the waves of love were replaced by a great fire that engulfed her body, the heat from her tapasya bursting into flames. It was thus that Sri Ram and the others found her, seated in a bowl of fire. Lakshman called out in panic, thinking that she was being burnt alive. He started to run toward her, but Sri Ram stopped him. In amazement, he gazed at the sight and said, "She is consuming all the impurities of this place and the effects of the war. This fire is the heat of her tapasya. Let it burn." The fire then withdrew back into her body and subsided. At that moment, the fire she had lit in Ayodhya went out, Soma said. I had been guarding it when it burst into a bright flame and then extinguished itself. After 14 years of burning incessantly, Mata's flame went out. I knew then that it was either victory or death, she continued. In Lanka, after the flames had been absorbed into Mata's body, she felt the presence of Sri Ram and opened her eyes to behold him. In a moment of overwhelming joy, she rose to greet him, but she had not stood on her feet for days, and with Amrita gone, her body suddenly experienced weakness from lack of food and water. As she tried to rise, the world began to spin around her, and Mata fell to the ground unconscious. Although Sri Ram also needed to be treated for his wounds and was depleted from the battle, he carried her into the palace and for days sat by her side, pouring drops of water into her mouth. Finally, she came to, and just as promised, she took her first food from Mandodari's hand, telling her that now she had to heal the land by feeding the people. Before leaving Lanka, Mata and Mandodari cooked and arranged a feast for all the people of Lanka. Feeding people was Mata's way of expressing her love. And then, of course, as you may already know, her last act on Lanka was to go to the sacred Ashoka tree that had sheltered her and to touch her forehead to its roots, paying homage to the great being who had been her companion and witness during the difficult year. Soma fell silent. Then, after a few minutes, she looked around and for the first time noticed all the ascetics gathered. She looked surprised. So many of you have come, and I have not yet fed you, she said quietly. Please forgive me. I will get your food ready. She, she started to rise, but one of the ascetics stopped her and said, Not tonight, Soma. Our bodies are satisfied, for you have fed our souls. My mother and I quietly took our leave, saying that we would return in the morning. That's all, friends, for today. Tomorrow we will be reading about the return to Ayodhya. Friends, if there is anybody who wish to share, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Beautiful as always, Madhu. Again, I'm the first one.
Thank you, Swapna. Yeah.
Amazing. And yeah, everything was in front of our eyes. And I was really surprised the way people portrayed Sita Ma had so much energy in her that it came
Mm,
out in the form of flame, and they put it out in the form of Agni Pariksha of her
right.
sanity.
Yeah, right.
It's like unbelievable how much a story can be changed.
True. Yes. Yes.
And
I was. Mm,
yeah, and also Anasuya coming and like it's
mm-hmm.
Anasuya, right? Like who came in multiple with multiple hands
Lopamudra.
and yes,
It's a
no,
Lopamudra.
who came in the end, like who fought
Yes.
with Ravana? Yeah, it was
It was.
sorry,
It was
Lopamudra.
Lopamudra.
Yeah, so that was totally hidden from the story.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
beautiful Madhu.
It's amazing. And today's theme of meditation was anger. And today the whole reading was about the anger, the battle, the inner
Yes,
battle. So
actually, the one that Sneha shared also, it was talking
yes.
about anger for
So
today.
that's what I took it
Yeah,
from. That's where I took it from. I thought, okay, in
yeah,
these 9 days, let us work on these things. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, good, good.
Beautiful Madhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Swapna. Thank you, Kavita. Yes, Archana.
Hey Madhu. Yeah,
Hey,
thanks for a
Archana.
very good start of Navratri. Um, yeah, it was a. I've never observed Navratri breath or did any puja. Anything. This is the first time I'm like I thought of doing the fasting and the puja and everything, and it was a really good start with the story.
Very
Though
good.
I cried, my eyes were closed, but I cried when she was fighting with Yamji.
Mm,
Yeah, it was like. And like we just when we used to read Ramayan,
mm,
Sita ji was just like a kind of a partner like a Ram. There was no
mm.
contribution mentioned
Right.
whatsoever about from her
Exactly.
side, isn't it?
Exactly.
And it just reminded me of like how the even the historians would have written the history as
Mm,
per their own purpose or like whatever they had mind to propagate or promote, and actual things would have been really hidden.
that's true.
You'll never come across like what was the reality unless and you like this was amazing like how much contribution she had, like as you said, he was
Right.
doing the outer part and she was doing the inner part, and they both have to be balanced, like both the things should be there to win any kind of battle.
Battle. Mm,
So, like when we go for a race we have to have a very strong willpower, aside from training like physically, like
mm,
so physical and mental are both the aspect, but we were never shown this fact in the
mm.
original Ramayana. It was always about Ramji and all the army and Lakshmanji and so on and so forth, but they really never mention about Sita ji. So
That's
it
true.
was just a wow feeling to like how she said Lakshmanji.
Yeah, exactly. It was not mentioned anywhere in the Ramayana. We thought it was
Ah,
Hanuman who brought the Sanjeevani, and with that,
exactly.
Lakshman came back to life. But we were not known that it was Sita Ma who was just
Sita,
fighting with Yamadev, and
and
like
also she
this
had
part
to
of
give her
taking
years,
some of
year.
her
I mean,
years.
life of
Yeah.
yeah, some of her years of from her life.
Yes. 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 So yeah, in the later parts, it will be amazing. I think this is the end of Ravana. So after they come to Ayodhya, there's lot. It will be nice. It will be very nice.
Good, good, good.
Thank
Nice
you.
start of
Thank you.
Navratri. And
Yes.
when she was fighting and all that, I somehow visual. I mean, like, I mean, I was not in meditation, but when Lopamudra, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Lopamudra ji incident came,
Mm,
I just like unknowingly from my mouth it came Jai Mata Di. Like, I don't know
mm,
why.
mm.
I don't know which form of goddesses she would be. I have
Wow.
no clue whatsoever. But like,
Mm,
somehow it just came out Jai Mata Di. I really
yeah.
don't know, but I was so full
Mm,
of gratitude for her to save, Sita ji.
mm.
It's so different to listen to the story with your eyes closed. This is the
That's true.
second time or third time I'm doing
That's true.
again. It was so different.
I always insist that it is very
Yeah,
good when we close our eyes, like we go into that
yeah.
space. Really,
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
good.
And also about
Nice.
the Ashoka ji, today for the first time, like in there is this group, detox, some group,
Mhm,
Navratri fasting started by Pari Patri ji.
mhm, mhm,
So in that, like she was mentioning, like from day one, you have to start walking barefoot, like for so and
mm,
so much time, and
mm.
hug the tree. So for the first time, I hugged tree. Like I went for a
Wow.
walk in the morning. I used to go, and I
Mm,
hugged trees. I felt so happy, so good,
wow.
and I. For the first time, we know that they give shelter, they give oxygen, these and that, but we never really thanked. I guess
Mm,
a lot of us, we never really thanked the trees.
yes,
So the suggestion she made, like it felt so good.
that's
It really
true.
choked. I went and I gave a big tree a hug and I said thank you for whatever you have been doing from eons and eons for
That's
each and
true.
everyone. And please, thanks from the deep of my heart, and please pass this message to all the other trees because
Yes, it's all connection. The
yeah,
trees
it's
are
all
all
connected,
connected.
right? So,
Mm,
yeah, even Pari was also saying the same thing. It's good that you said that, pass on this message.
mm,
I just felt
mm.
like saying that one particular tree, please pass on this
Yes,
message to whomever you
yes.
can, whichever tree you can. I felt
Mm,
so happy. For the first
wow.
time, I thanked, a tree also. It's so
Wow.
beautiful. We
Wow.
do it verbally. I write it on my gratitude journal, but actually
Mm.
doing was so
To
different.
do it is, yeah,
Yeah, isn't it? So, all in all,
yeah.
the first day of Navratri went so beautiful, so
Wonderful,
well. Thank you for the.
wonderful, wonderful. Yes. Thank you, Archana, for
Yeah,
sharing. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, friends, then we will all again see each other tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Germany time and 9:30 p.m. India time. As we have done today, tomorrow also we will be doing a half an hour meditation and then we'll continue with the story. Right? We will be reading two chapters tomorrow. Till we see each other, have a lovely day, a lovely night, and a lovely evening. Namaste to all. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.